Welcome back to Pest Control Unlocked, your weekly intelligence briefing for the pest industry. I'm Konstantin Schwartz. Last week, we established the baseline. We talked about the macro shift in 2025, moving from volume to value and from reaction to prediction. But for every operator and investor listening, the question remains, how do you actually execute that? How do you take a legacy service business built on trucks, PDAs, and chemical tanks and turn it into a data-driven risk management firm? The answer isn't just buying more software. It's about architecture. It's about building a central nervous system for your business. We need to talk about the digital control tower. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, great, another podcast about software, let's address the elephant in the room. We've been hearing about the digital revolution in pest control for the last 10 years or so. We've heard about smart devices, data platforms, and AI. And yet, if we look at the actual adoption numbers across the industry, it has been much slower than expected. Much slower. Why? Because over the last decade, technology didn't make the job easier. It made it harder. It was fragmented. You had one login for your CRM, another for your vehicle GPS, and a third for your rodent sensors. None of them talk to each other. That's not digital transformation. That is digital clutter. So why does it matter now? Why is 2025 the tipping point? Because the barriers have finally fallen. Hardware costs are down, automation is real, and AI has finally moved from the marketing hype to operational reality. Today, we're going to take a look at how to cut through the clutter, overcome those real-world adoption barriers, and build a system that actually protects your margin. Let's get into it. To understand the solution, we first have to admit that for the last 40 years, the industry has suffered from the island problem. The office is an island, the technician's truck is an island, and the customer's facility is an island. Information between the islands travels slowly, on paper, numerous spreadsheets, in voicemails, or in the weekly business reviews after the fact. Things will get forgotten. They fall through the cracks. This creates the cost of flying blind. Most companies know what happened yesterday, what was billed. They know what is scheduled for tomorrow, but they rarely know what's happening right now. Where is the margin leaking? You suspect technicians are spending 20 minutes in the truck doing admin between stops, or driving across town to check on traps that have been empty for 6 months. But without real-time data, you can't prove it, and you can't fix it. For the investors listening, this is where your EBITDA is dying. It's dying in windshield time and empty checks. In 2025, with labor costs at an all-time high, you simply cannot afford to pay an hourly technician to drive a $60,000 vehicle just to check a trap that has no activity. That is the definition of inefficiency, and the digital control tower is the cure. So what is the digital control tower? It's not a single app. It is an integration strategy. It is the convergence of 3 data streams: movement, sensing, and transparency, merged into a single view that allows you to stop reacting and start orchestrating. Let's start with movement. Traditional routing is static. You build a route, hand it to the tech, and hope it works. Control tower routing is dynamic. It integrates real-time traffic and automates the decision-making. But the systems can go deeper. It tracks idle time. And for some operators, this is where we need to have a very uncomfortable conversation about the reality of inner-city services. If a technician sits for 15 minutes outside a stop, an operator may look at the GPS and say, he's wasting time. A smart operator looks at the location and asks, is he safe? In major metros, technicians face threats that the back office often ignores. They're dealing with increasingly aggressive encounters and the constant threat of theft, targeting their equipment, the restricted materials on board, and even their personal effects. That tech isn't idling because they are lazy. They are unable to service the customer because they are waiting for a volatile situation to de-escalate so they can do their job safely. The control tower exposes this. It forces the office to see the safety tax of that route. If a stop in a high-risk zone takes 20 minutes longer because of security protocols, You need to know that. You need to price for it. You stop blaming the technician for the inefficiency and you start protecting them from the risk. The second layer is sensing. And for the manufacturers listening, this is where you come in. For a century, pest control was based on the check. You drive to a site, open a trap, look inside, maybe clean it, and then close it. Industry data tells us that over 90% of those traps are empty. That means 90% of that specific labor action is wasted. The digital control tower flips this model using IoT. Sensors and cameras become your always-on eyes, feeding data back to the tower before the truck rolls. We move from the command, go check every trap on the list, to the specific directive, go service the 3 traps that triggered at 2 a.m. This changes the technician's role. They aren't checking, they are solving. You're relying on their expertise. The third layer is transparency. The control tower isn't just for you, it's for the client. Your tier 1 commercial clients, food plants, pharma, logistics, already live in their own digital control towers. They expect yours to plug into theirs. They don't want a PDF service ticket. They want a dashboard. They want to see heat maps of activity, trend lines, and proof of service duration. When your control tower feeds data directly to their compliance team, you are no longer a vendor. You're a partner. You become sticky, and you become incredibly hard to fire. Now let's talk numbers. The skeptics will say, sensors and software integration are expensive. Where's the return? The return comes down to density and capacity. If you implement a control tower approach, you don't necessarily fire people, you increase their capacity. If I can use dynamic routing and remote monitoring to eliminate 2 hours of wasted driving and empty checking per day, that technician can now handle 15 to 20% more revenue without working a longer shift. For the investor, that means you just increase the revenue ceiling of your existing workforce by 20% without adding headcount. That is pure margin expansion. On top of that, you gain pricing power. The moment you can sell intelligence and real-time risk mitigation, you're no longer a commodity. You can charge a premium because you're providing compliance in a way the guy with a spray tank cannot. So how do you build this? You don't need to tear everything out and replace tomorrow. First, unify your data. Unify your operational data and your fleet data. Right now, your CRM tells you what you built, but your GPS tells you what you spent. If those two systems aren't talking via an API or a daily report, you're blind to your true margins. You need to bridge them to calculate revenue per unit of time on every single stop. From there, run a pilot. Don't roll out IoT devices to every account. Pick your most difficult, high-frequency commercial account. Deploy sensors there. Prove the labor savings on that site. When the team sees that the sensor saved them 10 hours of bait box inspections, the culture barrier disappears. And finally, stop the digital clipboard. I know most of you ditched paper years ago. You now have handhelds. But ask yourself, is your data structured or is it just digitized? If your technician types found rodent activity into a comment box, that is useless to a computer. That is just a digital sticky note. An algorithm cannot read a story, and it cannot graph a sentence. You need structured input. What does that mean? It means replacing the comment box with data fields. Don't let them type a paragraph. Make them select. Pest type, roof rat. Location, zone 3. Action, trap reset. Count, 2. Why? Because when data is structured, the control tower can wake up and tell you, Zone 3 has a 40% spike in roof rat activity every November. That is predictive. You need data that feeds the AI to make your business smarter tomorrow than it is today. That is the digital control tower. It's the difference between running a route list and running a modern pest control operation. We are done with the era of fragmented tools and alert fatigue. The companies that integrate these systems, fleet, sensors, and CRM, will be the ones that survive the labor crunch. But here's the catch. You can build the best control tower in the world, but it is useless if the signal is trapped in a basement. Join me next week. We're leaving the dashboard and going down into the field. We're going to break down the infrastructure wars. Bluetooth versus cellular versus LoRaWAN and versus the new technologies on the horizon like Wi-Fi Halo. Because if you don't get the connection right, the control tower goes dark. Next episode is the connectivity battlefield. This is Pest Control Unlocked. I'm Konstantin Schwartz. Thank you for listening.